You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. We are inching closer to the NFL draft. As a matter of fact, we're just a couple of weeks away. We're two weeks from Thursday. 2 weeks from tomorrow is the NFL draft. I mean, we are almost there. And so what you're seeing right now is all these, late mock drafts that are coming out and position rankings and player rankings and all that good stuff. What you would expect this time of year as we're 2 weeks away from the draft. And to be very clear, I do put a lot of stock in the reputable draft analysts right now because these guys aren't just grading players as they see them. They're also taking the input from sources within organizations. Like they're talking to player personnel directors and scouts and all that sort of stuff about how teams view a player. Told you several weeks ago that one of the conversations I had with someone who was at the Combine, had a conversation with someone very close to C.J. Stroud's camp, and the feeling from C.J. Stroud's camp was the Colts were going to draft Bryce Young. And now you're starting to see more and more people mock Bryce Young first overall because that's really the vibe and that everyone's getting from all these different people. So it's not just like, hey, I'm going to throw together a draft board of how I see it. A lot of it's rooted in legitimacy. So I saw this today, and again, to reiterate, it's just one player. It's just one draft analyst, but it's Matt Miller from ESPN. And ESPN over the years have expanded their draft analyst roster. For a long time, it was just Mel Kiper. Then they added Todd McShay, and now they've got Reed and Miller, and they got a longer list of draft analysts, which is fine. You bring in more people. Well, Matt Miller at ESPN took his crack at ranking the top 368 prospects in the draft. Remember, you ain't going to have 368 players drafted, so this is ranking every player 1 to 368. And so it's kind of it's a good look at where guys might be projected to fall in the draft. And sometimes it gives you a sense of where value might be in the draft as well. So to be clear as well, there are 368 prospects. There are 259 picks in this year's draft. There's always compensatory picks, so the number changes. So 259 picks in this year's draft. I looked at this because I wanted to see how many LSU players he had and where he had them graded. The highest, this isn't going to be much of a surprise, but the highest graded prospect that Matt Miller from ESPN has on the board is B.J. Ojulari at number 36. He's got Ojulari as the 36th overall best player in the draft from LSU. So you look at that, it's not a surprise. BJ might be a late first-round pick. If the right team is selecting and he's on the board, that could make some sense. For a long time, we've looked at Ojulari and Kayshon Boutte as the top two players in the draft from LSU that might come off the board in whatever order they may. That is not the case now for Matt Miller. The guy who's made the biggest jump is Jaquelin Roy. He's got Jaquelin Roy ranked the 79th overall best player. Mel Kiper put out his 2-round mock draft, and remember, he had Jaquelin Roy going in round 2. So remember how I say, you start to see a consensus among different analysts because it's not just their opinion. They talk to other analysts and the teams, and you get a sense on players. So Jaquelin Roy is one of those guys that teams have put on the tape. They saw him work out. They've interviewed him, and he has rocketed up draft boards. It makes sense. He's a great kid, young man. He's great at U High. He's got to see him at LSU. He's versatile. He can play nose. He can play tackle. He can play multiple spots. So Jaquelin Roy at 79 isn't a great surprise. It was at this point where I thought I'd be on the lookout for Kayshon Boutte's name. And I'm getting to a point here, so bear with me. But Kayshon Boutte isn't the next LSU player they have on the board. It's Jay Ward at 131. So keep in mind, that's around a round 4 or 5 grade, effectively, is where you'd have Jay Ward if he's at 131. And I like Jay Ward. I think Jay Ward's going to play a long time in the NFL because he's so versatile. He reminds me a lot of P.J. Williams of the Saints. He's a guy that can play boundary corner. He can play nickel. He can play dime. He can play safety. He can play special teams. He is going to last a long time in the NFL because he can play darn near anywhere in the secondary. He can also play special teams. The next player, Kayshon Boutte, Anthony Bradford at 150 overall. Remember, there was a point when Ed Ogeron called him LSU's best offensive lineman. Bradford at 150 overall. And you would think this is about the time, man, like how far is Kayshon dropping in the eyes of a lot of these analysts or teams? He's not even the next guy off the board. 197 overall, Ali Gay. Ali Gay is one of those dudes that probably could have walked off the field back in 2020 after his first game ever at LSU against Mississippi State, opted out and been a high draft pick. But, of course, had an injury in 2021, came back in 2022, played that 3-4 outside linebacker, that big edge, as they call it, and showed some versatility, but we'll see where he is. It's only then that we see Kayshon Boutte's name. At 201 overall, according to Matt Miller on his prospect ranking, is where he's got Kayshon Boutte. One spot behind Cameron Mitchell, a cornerback from Northwestern, and one spot ahead of MJ Anderson, a defensive end from Iowa State. If you're wondering, the other prospects that he grades, Mekhi Gardner at 280, Micah Baskerville at 304, and Jure Jenkins at 324. That surprises me about Jure. If Jure Jenkins goes undrafted, that would be a epic failure from NFL teams. He's way too big and physical and fast and talented of a guy to not be picked by somebody. But anyway, we'll see what happens when that happens. I told you I was getting to a point, and here it is. I believe some players should opt out of their college careers. And I think I know that a lot of people aren't going to like that because oftentimes from a fan perspective, what you hear is we need team guys and opting out and get your education and all the things that are cliched talking points that fans mention forever, not thinking at all about seeing it through the lens of the college athlete who has a small window to maximize his physical ability and make as much money as possible and to go on. Because fans normally think about it through the lens of what's going to be best for my favorite team, not what's best for this player. I'm specifically in this instance talking about what's best for this player. And as the sample size grows, and COVID is really what spawned a lot of this. And remember, we saw some of this back in 2016 where it really started with bowl game opt-outs. And Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey were the first. And they got lambasted by a lot of people for opting out of the bowl game and quitting on their team and all the narrative stuff that the moral hierarchy and the moral relativists like to talk about. And they never consider what that young person's risking for an exhibition. And now it's so common. Some bowl games don't happen because you have so many players opt out because they're pointless. And they've always been pointless bowl games. So that, in 2016, opting out of bowl games really is what started the COVID opt-outs. That's what sort of creaked the door for a lot of athletes to kick it open and not play during the COVID season. And now we're, I think, seeing more and more of that. And we've seen enough years, we have a large enough sample size now to know that there are some guys that should not come back and play another season of college football because they're costing themselves too much money. And Kayshon Boutte is a great example of that. A lot of people, and it's funny, Jamar Chase was going to wear the number 7 for LSU in 2020. His junior year after the Natty, he was coming back, and Jamar Chase opted out of the season. And a lot of people here didn't like it. Now, he went on to be the 5th overall pick, and he's been an amazing pro, and so a lot of y'all forget about that. You don't want to talk about it, but a lot of y'all crapped on Jamar Chase for quitting on his team. Derek Stingley, same thing. Y'all know who you are. I don't need to go get the receipts on Twitter. Y'all know who you are. But a lot of y'all crapped on Derek Stingley for quitting on his team and being soft and all that sort of stuff. He went number 3 overall. A lot of the same people were celebrating when Derek Stingley went number 3 overall. The point is, the NFL don't care if you play in college. What the NFL wants is for you to be healthy. They'd rather you opt out and be healthy. Nick Bosa. So it's not a LSU. Nick Bosa opted. He was injured. Instead of battling through the injury to get back on the field, opted out at Ohio State. Said, I'm not going to play this year. I'm just going to get ready for it. I'm going to get healthy, get ready for the draft. Went number 2 overall. It's worked out for him. The NFL doesn't care if you play that final season of college football. And you're seeing this growing list now of guys that choose to come back to school, that don't need to, that cost themselves money. I mean, Spencer Rattler would have been likely the first pick in the draft last year had he not played that season at Oklahoma. Instead, he played the season at Oklahoma, got benched for Caleb Williams, transferred to South Carolina, was meh, and now is back for another collegiate season. Like, Spencer Rattler should be entering his second NFL season as a top 5 draft pick with gobs and gobs of money. Now, instead, he's playing a COVID year at South Carolina, and we'll see where he falls in next year's draft. Maybe, God knows, whatever. Several years back, same with Matt Barkley. Matt Barkley would have been the number 1 overall pick. Decided to go back to Southern Cal, and it cost him. He ended up being a 5th-round pick of Buffalo. I don't even know if he's still in the league. I honestly have no idea. And now look at Kayshon Boutte. These are just some examples of it. Kayshon should not have played last year at LSU. If Kayshon, after the injury against Kentucky, had taken the season off, had rehabbed, healed, gotten his body right, gone to the combine, run really well, he'd be a top 15 pick. Before this past season, he was in everybody's top 15 in the draft. Everybody. Consensus, him, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, best receivers in the draft. Consensus on everybody's list. And now I'm looking 2 weeks from the draft. Matt Miller at ESPN ranks him the 201st best prospect overall. Kayshon Boutte's probably going to be a day 3 pick. He cost himself probably 8 figures by coming back to school. Why play? Now, for a lot of guys, they'll need the extra year. They'll need the film. They'll need the progression, the advancement. But if you're a guy that's going to be a top 15 pick in the draft, you have nothing to gain by coming back to school. You want to come back and win a championship? Great. And to each their own. Make your own decision in life, whatever it is. But guys like Kayshon Boutte should have opted out. He should have done what Jamar Chase did. He should have done what Nick Bosa did. He should have done what Derek Stingley did. Get yourself ready. Go get your bag. Because it ain't going to be there forever. I wish him well, man. But for Kayshon, what is so abundantly clear here is he's not going to get broke off until and unless he gets to a second contract. It's going to be his only shot to really get a bag. And it's unfortunate. So, wish him well, man. Wish all the LSU guys well. But we could be waiting a while before we hear the first Tigers name called in the draft coming up 2 weeks from tomorrow. And Kayshon could have the longest wait of all those names. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.